Is Will Smith staging his big comeback? Or has he already burned through the last of his goodwill? That's the question fans, critics, and even Hollywood executives are asking, as the chaos around him only seems to intensify. What should have been a triumphant return is now spiraling into a storm of accusations, rejections, and brutal power plays that are reshaping his entire career. And at the center of it all is a video that has the internet buzzing for all the wrong reasons. When Will posted clips from his European comeback tour on YouTube and Instagram, people didn't see a superstar reviving his legacy. They saw something strange, almost surreal. Fans pointed out warped faces, hands with too many fingers, and signs in the crowd that seemed to shift mid-shot. One read for a 6 instead of fresh. The more people watched, the more convinced they became that the audience cheering him on wasn't even real. Memes flooded social media, clowning him for allegedly padding his comeback with AI-generated fans. "Yo, half his crowd doesn't even look human," one user wrote, while others laughed that he thought no one would notice the glitches. Now, some argued the photos themselves were real, but edited, stitched together with AI to make the crowd look fuller than it was. Others insisted it was all digital fakery. Either way, the damage was done. Instead of focusing on his music or his performance, the conversation turned into a giant roast about whether his fan base had been manufactured out of pixels. And that was just the first crack in what was supposed to be his big return. Behind the scenes, things were falling apart in ways even more personal. Will had lined up a playful skit with Snoop Dogg for a late-night appearance. Something lighthearted to soften his image and remind people he could still laugh at himself. But Snoop pulled out at the very last minute. No reason, no explanation, just canceled. Instantly, whispers spread that Snoop didn't want to be caught standing next to Will after everything that's gone down. Fans speculated it wasn't worth the risk of being dragged into the ongoing drama. For Will, that cancellation hurt more than the slap that started all of this. A friend turning their back, especially someone as iconic as Snoop, cut deeper than any internet meme. But if fellow artists were drifting away, the corporate world was paying even closer attention. Sony had long considered Will one of their golden tickets. He was supposed to anchor Men in Black 5 with a jaw-dropping $100 million paycheck, a return to the kind of blockbuster deals he commanded at the height of his career. For a while, that seemed locked in, but as controversy after controversy piled up, the studio's confidence wavered. The AI crowd debacle, the political rants, the endless feuds, it all added up to a brand that no longer looked bulletproof. So Sony made their move. They slashed his payout almost in half, cutting him down to $55 million. For anyone else, that might still sound astronomical. But for Will, who had banked on this film being his redemption arc, it was a public humiliation. Reports claim he erupted during remote meetings, unloading on executives, even dragging the CEO into fiery tirades. He accused Sony of discrimination, suggesting the pay cut wasn't about business, but about bowing to critics and haters. For someone once considered Mr. Box Office, this was a staggering fall from grace. And then came the blow that turned the drama into a family affair. Buried inside Will's original contract was a demand. Jada Pinkett Smith would appear in the film, not as a cameo, but as Agent J's love interest, a flashy role that would tie into his $100 million deal. But when Sony slashed his check, they slashed her part too. No Jada, no storyline, just gone. Insiders say Will broke down when he heard the news. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about pride, about the image of standing tall with his wife in a blockbuster that could have reset their reputation. To have that stripped away left him furious. He ranted that Sony wasn't just cutting him down, they were dragging his family into the fallout. What was supposed to be a power move for the Smiths had turned into yet another humiliating setback. Desperate to claw back what he lost, Will threatened legal action. Sources close to the situation claim he isn't really interested in winning a court case. Instead, he's using the threat of a lawsuit as leverage to force Sony's hand. His goal, restore his original $100 million payout and reinstate Jada's role. But Sony isn't flinching. Executives have made it clear $55 million is final, no renegotiations, no exceptions. In fact, instead of pocketing the money, Sony redirected more than $50 million into production and marketing. Their message couldn't be clearer. They're betting the success of Men in Black 5 won't depend on Will's star power. And that's the heart of this entire saga. For decades, Will was the kind of actor who could carry a movie just by putting his name on the poster. Studios fought for him. Audiences showed up. He was untouchable. But now, insiders say the industry sees him as a liability. The Oscars slap was the turning point. One moment of rage broadcast to millions, and everything unraveled. Since then, instead of rebuilding, Will has doubled down on feuds, rants, and divisive statements. His recent album, based on a true story, was supposed to be his chance to speak from the heart. Instead, it was filled with digs at Chris Rock and grudges that most fans were tired of hearing about. Add in political tirades against Trump and his supporters, and suddenly he wasn't just alienating Hollywood, he was alienating the audience. Even other stars are quietly laughing at his downfall. Sources claim Chris Rock has joked in private that this entire Sony meltdown is karma. People in Snoop Dogg's camp have allegedly said backing out of that skit was the smartest move Snoop ever made. The narrative spreading through Hollywood is simple. Working with Will Smith is just more trouble than it's worth. The fallout extends beyond his reputation to the very franchise meant to save him. Men in Black 5 isn't exactly inspiring confidence. The last attempt to reboot the brand, Men in Black International, was a flop that left fans unimpressed. Without the chemistry of Will and Tommy Lee Jones, the magic was gone. Now Sony is gambling on Will again, but the circumstances couldn't be worse. Fans aren't talking about excitement for the movie. They're talking about his tantrums, his pay cut, his threats. That's the last thing a studio wants when sinking hundreds of millions into a blockbuster. Even the theme park ride, once a symbol of his golden era, may be on the chopping block. Rumors swirl that Universal Studios Orlando could retire the Men in Black attraction within the next few years because the franchise feels outdated. Imagine that. A ride once built on his superstardom being erased like the very memories the films were about. The symbolism is brutal. Yet through all of this, Will seems trapped in a no-win situation. Walking away from Men in Black 5 makes him look weak, like he can't stomach the new terms. Staying in the project under Sony's reduced offer makes him look like he's swallowing his pride. Either way, the power he once commanded is slipping through his fingers. For the first time in decades, it's not Will calling the shots. It's the studios. And maybe that's the most shocking twist of all. For years, Will Smith was considered untouchable. The guy who could do no wrong. The star who turned every film into an event. Now, executives are standing firm against him, and the industry is watching closely. If Sony holds its ground, it signals a new era where even the biggest names can't strong-arm studios anymore. If they cave, it means Will still has enough clout to bend corporations to his will. Right now, though, all signs point to Sony holding steady. And with each passing week, more voices in Hollywood are whispering that Will's time at the top may finally be over. The fan base that once adored him is fractured. The co-stars who once lined up to work with him are keeping their distance. The franchises he once carried now feel stale. The truth is, the comeback he imagined looks less like redemption and more like a cautionary tale. The slap may have been one night, but the ripple effects are still being felt years later. Instead of rebuilding trust, Will has poured fuel on the fire. Instead of mending fences, he's doubled down on grudges. And now, even his most loyal supporters are asking if he's fighting for his career, or just fighting to fight. So where does that leave him? Sony is betting that Men in Black 5 can succeed without overpaying him. Fans are divided about whether they'll even watch. Other stars are steering clear, and the internet? They're too busy clowning him over AI-generated crowds to take his comeback seriously. What happens next could define the rest of Will Smith's career. If the film crashes and burns, his last shot at redemption might vanish. If it succeeds, it may prove he can still deliver despite the scandals. But no matter what, the days of Will Smith being untouchable are over. The studios are in control now, and maybe that's the real story. The man who once felt bigger than Hollywood is learning the hard way that in the end, nobody is bigger than the machine. So what do you think? Is Sony finally doing the right thing by standing their ground? Or is Will Smith about to shock everyone with one last Hollywood twist? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe for more stories from behind the curtain. And don't miss the next video on your screen. It's packed with even more wild scandals straight out of Hollywood.